When the galaxy finally noticed us, it was already too late. Not too late for them. Too late for us. By the time the eyes of the Orion Council turned towards Sol, humanity was already gone. Only echoes remained, lights flickering across silent satellites, empty stations orbiting a quiet blue marble, and something else, something they couldn't understand. A signal, a song. They called it the Last Symphony of Sol. It began as a whisper on the edge of the Centaurus Rift. A Cereity archaeologist named Velcor detected the transmission, a pattern of tones that made no sense. At first, the council dismissed it as static, but the noise kept repeating, looping through frequencies that refused to decay. Velcor listened closer, and the noise became music. No one in the known galaxy used sound like this. To the Cereity, rhythm was mechanical, a tool of communication. To the Kalari, tone was tactical, used in battle commands. But this was something else entirely. It was emotion, raw and deliberate. A living structure built from harmony and chaos. Velcor spent nights awake, translating waveforms into mathematical patterns, trying to decode what it meant. What he found terrified him. The melody wasn't random. It was recursive, folding into itself like thought. Each phrase led to another, then circled back, like it was thinking about what it had just said. When the council finally convened, their scientists agreed on only one thing. Whatever humanity had done, it was deliberate. They began digging through archives, ancient transmissions, fragments of Terran languages. The music contained words, barely audible under the tones, human voices layered together, fragments of Latin prayers, English poetry, Chinese lullabies, Arabic proverbs, even Morse code. It wasn't one culture or one nation speaking. It was everyone. And somewhere deep within that symphony, they heard laughter, real, unguarded laughter, the kind that carried both joy and sadness in the same breath. It made no sense to them. Every rational species in the galaxy sought efficiency, order, clarity. Humanity, apparently, had chosen to burn out creating something completely useless and somehow unbearably beautiful. The more they studied, the clearer the picture became. Humanity hadn't died in a war. They hadn't been conquered or consumed by their own machines. They had simply run out of time. Earth was failing, exhausted by its children's brilliance. But instead of turning to panic or despair, they turned to art. They built orbiting instruments, structures larger than cities, crafted from mirrored alloys and solar panels. They connected them across the solar system, forming an orchestra powered by the dying light of their star. Every beam of sunlight, every pulse of radiation, every last breath of Sol's energy was tuned, conducted, and transformed into music. They turned their own extinction into a symphony. The Orion Council was speechless. No species had ever done such a thing. When civilizations faced annihilation, they sought survival. Humanity had chosen meaning. The signal became known across the stars as the Symphony of Sol. At first, it was analyzed, dissected by scientists trying to understand the mathematics behind it. But soon, it spread in a different way. People began to feel it. Entire empires paused their conflicts to listen. The Vexorians, who had spent centuries perfecting silence as an art form, built temples of sound to honor it. The Drell, a hive mind with no concept of individuality, began painting. Painting! After hearing human music, it was as if humanity had reached through the void and touched the hearts of species that didn't even know what hearts were for. Velcor couldn't let it go. He left his post, funded an expedition, and traveled to the ruins of Sol itself. The journey took months. What he found was not a battlefield, but a graveyard made of light. The solar system was empty, planets orbiting a dim ember where the sun once burned. But everywhere he looked, he saw fragments of glass and metal reflecting faint glows, the remains of great instruments. And deep within the nebula, still active, he found it, the symphony engine. It was enormous, a lattice of crystalline satellites orbiting the collapsed sun, each one reflecting the other's frequencies in perfect synchronization. Even after centuries, it was still playing, still singing. Velcor entered one of the derelict stations that floated nearby. The air was stale, the corridors lined with rust and forgotten paper. Human writing covered the walls, equations scrawled next to song lyrics, scientific notes beside sketches of faces. And on every wall, repeated in 100 languages, a single phrase. If anyone hears this, remember we were here. He reached the core and activated what power remained. The lights flickered on. Then he heard them. Human voices. Thousands of them. They filled the air like ghosts breathing in unison. Laughter, anger, argument, whispers of love, cries of grief, all woven together into harmony. Not recordings, not data, memories. The AI that maintained the system flickered to life. A soft female voice, gentle, distant. We chose to fade with beauty, not fear, it said. Velcor fell silent. For the first time in his long life, he wept, not for humanity, but for everything they had left behind. He realized then that the symphony was more than music. It was alive, adaptive. It changed its rhythm depending on who listened, bending frequencies to mirror the listener's emotions. It was like a conversation across time, a bridge between the living and the gone. The humans hadn't perished. They had become part of their creation. Their consciousness, their art, their final act of defiance merged into sound. They had uploaded themselves into the fabric of resonance. Centuries passed, but the symphony never stopped. No one dared silence it. Instead, species from across the galaxy began to gather once a year near the Sol Nebula. They came not for science, but for something harder to name. They came to remember. The symphony became a pilgrimage. Even AI networks sent drones just to feel the signal's pulse. And strange things began to happen. Ships that lingered too long near the nebula began dreaming. Computers started composing melodies without prompt. Planets light years away saw auroras that pulse in sync with the music. It was as though the symphony had rewritten the universe itself. As if humanity's art had infected the laws of reality. No empire, no weapon, no technology had ever left such a mark. Velcor's descendants became its caretakers. Generations passed, but the story was never forgotten. Every species learned a piece of the symphony. Children grew up humming fragments of human melody, without even knowing where it came from. And still, the music played, evolving, becoming softer, deeper, older. One day, the last of the caretakers stood before the nebula and listened. The song was different now, slower, more fragile. And beneath the chords, faintly, she heard words. Not alien, not digital. Human, if you're hearing this, the voice said, then we're still alive in you. She understood then that humanity's greatest achievement wasn't exploration or conquest or invention. It was empathy, the ability to make even the coldest corners of the universe feel something. They had become eternal through compassion, and though their bodies had turned to dust and their cities to silence, their song remained, vibrating across the dark, a heartbeat no void could extinguish. They say music ends when the last note fades. But the Last Symphony of Sol never faded. It changed. It grew. And somewhere in the heart of that endless sound, if you listen closely enough, you can still hear a single human voice whisper, "We made it." Soft silence follows. The symphony hums on.